Good morning. It is December 6th of 2021, and sorry if the screen is shaking. Um, so this morning, just going over, you know, I was reading in Romans 2, and Paul is talking about the law and circumcision and how, um, you know, basically, the law, even though if we know the law, then we should follow the law. But there's Gentiles, there's people who don't know the law, who will be judged based off of their consciousness of what they do know. So the more we, what I was getting out of that verse in particular, where it says, for not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified. For me, that was, there's people that haven't read this, that have only um, been subjected to partial pieces of God's overall law. And it says in here somewhere right before, it says in chapter 1, in verse 20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. This is talking about the people, you know, um, that aren't Christians, that don't know God, that there's attributes, that there's um, that God has a plan, that God's just not like, well, if nobody told you about Christ, then you're just going to hell. But that's between God and them. But He's saying in Romans that He is judging them based off of um, some other form that is not this law. But when we know this law, when we know this word, when we know what He's expecting, what pleases Him and what doesn't, then we are bound by this law, not for salvation. I don't necessarily believe it's all a salvational thing, but we will be judged for every idle word and for everything we do. You know, will we get to heaven and be purified by fire? Thank God I made it to heaven. But I would like to get there and be able to not barely scrape my way through, and have caused more damage on the way and just barely made it in. I would like to have been a good and faithful servant, one who has heard the word and accepted it and multiplied, the fourth seed. And so, I want to read, I just pulled away from James, you know, um, see if I can get to it real quick. There we go. So let's read some of this real quick. So in James, it talks about, in James 1, there's a lot. Obviously, James is the big, faith without works is dead. Obviously, that's his main, hallmark verse, but before that, in verse 1, it talks about in chapter 21, therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks in the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, it is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer. This one will be blessed in what he does. I want to be blessed in what I do. So I want, it goes in, like it talks about, if you think among yourselves he is religious and does not bridle his tongue. Bridling my tongue has been an issue that I've always struggled with, and I still struggle with, and I'm so far, I'm way better than I used to be, and it's only because of God. But there's conviction in here for me, that I'm learning how to use this word to transform my mind and my thoughts. And the other thing is in chapter 2, It talks about faith without works, and it's like between 14 and 26. I want to read this. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and desolate and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to him, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that there is one God, you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, what faith without works is dead? But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? And I just sit there and I think, it's hard not to correlate this, the old Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, the hallmark, our assurance of faith, or our assurance of salvation, comes through, one of the main verses that we read for that. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. Is Ephesians 2, and it says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. It's funny because nobody ever throws in that verse 10. They normally just read verse 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Yeah. God's sacrifice and God's blood and God's, Jesus, his sacrifice is sufficient. It is the only thing that paid. Nothing we can do could ever pay that salvation fee. However, we are his workmanship, crafted in Christ Jesus for good works. So this whole, the grace, we have been saved. So through faith, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And it's hard not to correlate and be like, okay, through faith I am saved. Is my faith alive by the works that I display? Am I showing? Am I living in my faith? Is my faith an active action, or is it just a declaration of this? Or is my faith in action? So I don't know. And these are deep things. And I don't want to bounce up and down in my salvation, but I definitely want to make sure that I am aware, because if I'm misled or fooled, and obviously I believe that God is calling us. He will open our eyes, he will reveal these things to us, he will show us the path, and he knows our hearts. But if we are deceived and we are living in sin, thinking that we can just do whatever we want, do we really have faith? And are we sealed? And so I don't know. I just know that I'm working out my own salvation, and sharing that process and that work. And so God bless. Have a great day.